Forever Young and the Legacy Series, hosted by J.R. Lewis and Chris J. Saturdays 6 to 9 a.m. on Isaac 98.1 is brought to you by the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services Education Unit. This week on the Legacy Series, on Forever Young, with your hosts J. Errol and Chris J. They're joined by special guest Mrs. Erica Williams-Connell, the daughter of Dr. the Honorable Eric Williams, our first Prime Minister, called the Father of the Nation. Tune in to this special interview this Saturday on Forever Young, 6 to 9 a.m. in the Legacy Series, brought to you by the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services Education Unit.
And we're back with you. Good morning to our listeners all over the world. I'm told that our chairman, His Excellency Ambassador Philip Spencer, is online. He's listening. Good morning, Mrs. Erica Williams-Connell. It's good to have you for the first time with us at 98.1 FM.
Good morning, Errol, and thank you for having me.
I am so excited about our discussion that we're going to have today, because I don't think for some time now we've been wanting to speak to someone about Dr. Williams. I was saying to Chris this morning that I refer to him as a colossus. The towering intellect of that man has not yet been quantified by anyone that I know of to give justice to the quality of the person that we're going to deal with. So I think the best person to describe him would be you. A lot of people talk about him, but you knew the man. Dr. Eric Williams was your dad. I want you to start by telling us what you know about him growing up in Trinidad and Tobago, in Port of Spain.
He was the eldest of 12 children, amazingly. He attended Tranquility Primary School, where he won a college exhibition. You know, the family was not middle class by any means, and they had a difficult time making ends meet. His father was a postal clerk, and his mother, obviously a homemaker, which perhaps is an even harder job if you ask me. And you know, she used to bake, and he would have to go out on the street corner and sell the goods. And I remember that when my daughter, who's now 35 years old, was born, I was able, fortunately, to take a leave of, not a leave of absence, but I was able to be a stay-at-home mom for a few years. And some snide people or whatever it was in Trinidad and Tobago said that I was selling tambourine balls. But like that is a big deal. I mean, that's a perfectly acceptable job.
It makes you an entrepreneur.
So, I mean, yeah, don't we all buy tambourine balls from vendors on the road? So, I mean, what's the big deal? But anyway, that was sort of keeping the tradition alive, I guess. He won a college exhibition to attend QRC, and he was an excellent student. Of course, he was good at cricket and football. He gained colors in both sports at QRC, and he was captain of the QRC football team. And when he went to Oxford, he won a scholarship there. He also played on the Oxford cricket team, Oxford University. But the interesting thing is he won many prizes. He was really a very brilliant child. Mm-hmm. And one of the prizes he won at QRC was the Gerald Dawley Prize. And that was a prize that was the students and the faculty voted for the student who was the best example, all-round example at QRC, and he won that prize. So his peers recognized him for his abilities, both intellectual and sports.
I was going to say to you, I met a man years ago named Geoffrey Cumming Bart, who went to St. Mary's College, and he was telling me that he played football against your dad, and he said he was an excellent footballer.
He was. He really was. As I said, he cricket. He was on the QRC football team. He was captain of the football team, and that is a good segue into a good anecdote. well, while he was at QRC, the British in those days gave 3 island scholarships a year in different categories. So in his category, he could only, of course, take one examination. Well, he failed it twice, which, I tell when my daughter was younger and my granddaughter that, failure is an impetus for success.
Absolutely.
So success is not just about how many times you manage not to fall. Success is how many times you fall and you pick yourself up and you get up. So he failed it twice, and on his you could only take the exam 3 times. On his third and final try, the day before, QRC, the team, had a football game and they were losing. He was watching on the sidelines with his friend Halsey McShine, and they were losing. So now the father, my grandfather, had forbidden him from playing in the match because he didn't want him to injure himself so that he can't take this final exam the next day. So anyway, the team was losing, so he persuaded Halsey to put him on the handlebars of Halsey's bike, and they rode home to get his uniform and cleats and whatever else. And he came and he scored the winning goal. So, that was, I'm sure, obviously his father didn't know, but it's a good example of initiative. Mm-hmm. It's also a good example of not obeying your parents.
But Halsey McShine that you've mentioned was also not just his good friend, but I'm told was also his medical doctor.
Yes, he had 2 basically. One was oh my God, David Wyke. Mm-hmm. Imagine having a senior moment. I grew up with David Wyke. David Wyke and Halsey, and they would come to the house, once a week to check his blood pressure and check, whatever. So he was very mindful of his health. And Halsey also won an island scholarship. He also went to Oxford, so they were at Oxford at the same time. Mm-hmm. And Halsey studied medicine, and that leads me to another anecdote. When in those days, a black man could only aspire to the law or medicine. That is the only way you could be deemed successful. Well, E.W. was not interested in either. He couldn't stand the sight of blood, and he did not want to do law. So when his father asked him, well, what is it you want to do? He said, E.W. said, I want to study the arts. Well, the father let go an expletive that rhymes with arts and was horrified. But, this was just not in his plan, the father's plan. He was a bit of an autocrat, and so probably that's where E.W. took it from. But anyway, with the 12 children, I think you have to be an autocrat, right? But so when the father went with him to Oxford, actually. They went by ship. They went to Oxford. And then E.W. stayed there for 12 years. He couldn't afford to come home. Mm-hmm. And after he came home, after 12 years with his doctorate, the father looked at him, and this is how he greeted him. So, you are a doctor after all. That was not congratulations, not you did a great job, son. No. So, you are a doctor after all. So that was the environment in which he grew up.
Someone told me that when he was at Oxford, that he made up his mind that no one would beat him in any exam that he was going to do. And so, therefore, he topped the class at every point in time. Am I correct in that?
Well, I don't know if he made up his mind about that, but he did a BA degree in modern history, and he placed first in the first class of the history honors school. It was the college's first in many, many years. And that brings me to another anecdote. When he first went to Oxford and met with his tutors and so on, and I guess sometime into his time there, initially, the tutor said to him, "Don't worry to come to class. It is clear that you know the material. You ace all the material. Don't bother to come to class. Here's something else you can study in the meantime." Blah blah blah. So of course, racism was alive and well at Oxford, and there was this very supercilious student with his nose stuck in the air, and he said when apparently they would put lists of the students outside the class, and he'd noticed that EW's name was not on there, and he said, "Oh, you don't speak English well enough, do you?" So EW let that pass. And then when the exam results, and he wasn't going to class, the exam results came out and they posted them outside the class, and the same supercilious fool was standing there with EW. EW placed first in everything, and EW said, "Well, you see, we speak Latin in Trinidad too." So he had a very acerbic wit, as people know.
Yes.
Yes. And he got that actually from his parents. There are countless family stories about the repartee, the same thing with the father. You want to study the arts?
After graduating from Oxford, he worked with the West Indian Commission for a short bit. No, he went to Howard University, and then the West Indian Commission. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, but we're skipping over a really important part of his life. He wrote a thesis at Oxford, which earned him his doctorate.
Yes.
And it was brilliant.
Yes.
C.L.R. James had taught him at QRC. He was both his teacher and mentor. Mm-hmm. And of course, they discussed what the thesis should be. C.L.R. James already had this, very, very notable book, The Black Jacobins, about the Haitian Revolution.
Yes.
And C.L.R. James actually says that he wanted to write a book on this aspect of history. The economic aspect of the abolition of the slave trade and slavery. That was the name of the economic aspect of the abolition of the West Indian slave trade and slavery. That was the name of the thesis. But when he saw what EW was able to produce, he realized that the future of that part of West Indian history was in good hands. So he wrote this thesis and wanted to try to get it published in Britain. He went to a publisher called Warburg, who had published all of Stalin and Trotsky's texts, and Warburg absolutely refused to publish it. And he actually says he has a quote here. He says, let me just see if I have it here. He actually says, "Mr. Williams, are you trying to tell me that British slavery was abolished for economic and not for humanitarian reasons? I would never publish such a book. It is against the British tradition." This is a man who had already published all of Stalin and Trotsky's works. So EW couldn't get it published there. So then he took up an appointment at Howard University, and he what he called the Negro Oxford. Howard University had tons of very intellectual black scholars there at the time, and he then rewrote the thesis, and it became this book, this landmark book, Capitalism and Slavery. Mm-hmm. And in 1944, the University of North Carolina Press in the U.S. published the book, and it has never been out of print in the U.S. It's been translated into 9 languages: Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Turkish, and Korean among them. And this year is going to be its 10th language, Dutch. That is in process as we speak. So it's been a totally landmark book. Interestingly enough, this book has just been republished in the UK. It was first published by a small but very notable press, Andre Deutsch, in 1964. It went through several printings, but it has been out of print for decades. After Andre died, other companies bought over his firm, and they have not been interested in doing much about Eric Williams. So I asked for the rights to revert to me, and then gave the rights to the University of North Carolina Press. They then sold the UK rights to Penguin Modern Classics. If you're of a certain age, everybody will know about Penguin books.
Yes.
And the thing has gone viral. It was published on February 23rd, and it has gone viral. And if I may, I will just read for you what the Penguin publicity manager said about the book. She said that prior to its publication on February 23rd of this year, the UK Guardian had written a very extensive article about it. And that article was published on January 23rd. And she says the Guardian article has had a huge impact in the UK. It has been widely shared. And the day of its release on January 23rd, 2022, it was one of the most read news stories on their website, constantly in the top 10. And that made Capitalism and Slavery, the UK version, jump dramatically on UK Amazon to number 4 in all nonfiction books. And she said there have been an astonishing 1,400 copies pre-ordered in one day, which is unheard of. She says, she goes on, in all my career at Penguin, I haven't seen anything like it. It's our most pre-ordered Penguin classic ever. And that was January 23rd. But on March 1st, she then writes to me, Capitalism and Slavery will debut at number 5 on the March 6, 2022 Sunday Times bestseller list, with an astonishing 2,887 copies sold in the first week of publication. It is Penguin Modern Classics' first non-fiction book to go in the top 10 Sunday Times bestseller list. So it's just gone viral, this publicity that the book has generated, and the interest that the book has generated.
Which is important, because I want to go back to the fundamental premise that he used when he wrote that classic piece of historical information, that book, in that he changed the thought process of how people saw slavery as the British getting out of it because they were so kind and generous to us. And he was saying, no. This is because of the economic reasons that were attached to slavery, and the reason for them getting out was because they were not going to make the level of money that they were going to make. It was costing them too much. Am I correct?
That is one of the principal theses, yes. But it's not as though he did not give tribute to the humanitarians that helped move the anti-slavery movement forward. It's not like he didn't give them it's not that he didn't give them any credence, but it's like during President Clinton's time, one of his people coined the phrase, "It's the economy, stupid." Yeah. So, and that is exactly what it's where this is where people feel things in their wallets.
Yes.
And in their pocketbooks. So this he was able to show, and imagine that he wrote this when he was 33 years old, the thesis. And in 1938, when he did all the research, the tools of research were not like they are today.
Yeah.
Not at all. So it was just phenomenal. Now, why is it that it has this book has had such a reception now in the UK when it was published before? And that is because of the climate.
Yeah. Black
Lives Matter, the Colston Four. These were 4 young people that trashed the statue of Colston that was and threw it into Bristol Harbour.
Yes.
And they were prosecuted for it, and the jury acquitted them because their lawyer was able to show them that they were not vandalizing. They were trying to rectify the wrongs of the history that was proposed at that time, that Edward Colston, I think his first name was Edward, was such a decent man and so on. But he was a major slave owner.
Yes.
So I think just the time is, in the UK, as I said, it's never been out of print in the US. The time is just right. And interestingly enough, in the US, over the years, there have been affirmations and refutations of Williams's. He has several theses in the book of his propositions, refutations and affirmations, and all that has done, the pendulum swings wildly back and forth. All that has done has made the book more popular and more significant. I just read for you what one professor at Duke University, William Darity, says. He says, regardless of the conclusion we scholars reach about Williams's analysis in Capitalism and Slavery, what is undeniable is that his work must be addressed by any serious scholar of slavery and the slave trade. And although scholars of the British Industrial Revolution generally have ignored Williams's proposition, they only can continue to do so by placing their own intellectual integrity at peril. For Eric Williams managed to produce a work that now has to be considered central in the historiography of slavery and abolition.
And therefore, should not that be the centerpiece of part of our education system in Trinidad and Tobago as we teach our young people about our history, about slavery, about reparations that we keep talking about from time to time? Should that not be part of the centerpiece of the conversation?
Well, it should, and but it is a university type book. You wouldn't teach that at Cape level.
Yeah.
Maybe some kind of proposition in it, but not the actual book. And it is taught. In fact, the Eric Williams Memorial Collection, Research Library, Archives, and Museum at the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine, we offer two UE History Department prizes annually. We've done it since 2007. We've done it since 1999. We offer two prizes for two different categories: capitalism and slavery, and imperial studies in imperialism, etc. And so it is taught. But yesterday I was doing another interview on another Trinidad and Tobago radio station, and one of the moderators was saying that many young people today don't even know who Eric Williams was. And I totally believe that. Totally believe that. And that is shocking.
Yes.
That is totally shocking. And it's unacceptable, frankly. So I don't really know what there was one many years ago. I did an analysis. There was one time I got all these social studies books. I'm looking at them now here from Trinidad and Tobago, and they were not standardized. And one of them actually did not have anything about Eric Williams in that book, but they had about the yachties and shagaramas. Now,
isn't that ridiculous?
Go figure.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about whether you liked Eric Williams, whether you agreed with him, whether you were against him in politics. That's irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. Nobody talks about that with George Washington today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not at all. And if we don't pay attention to the road marks of the past, the future begins to lose its points of reference, as one of my favorite quotes. So if we don't know about our who Eric Williams was, there's something radically wrong with the system.
And that is why we, and in this station, we do the program Legacy Series, because we had Gloria Valère, an interview with her some weeks ago, where we were talking about her father, Sir Larry Constantine, Lord Larry Constantine. And we were talking, and she then said that the book Black Jacobins was actually written at their home because C.L.R. James used to visit their home while she was in London. And one of the reasons why we're so grateful that you are here with us today is to cement that thought that we have to bring to the fore the discussion about our heroes, the people who, through their dint of hard work, brought Trinidad and Tobago to a place where it can be seen on a world stage. And your father did that. Your father did that in many ways.
Yes, he did. But we also, we call at the Eric Williams Memorial Collection, we call it EWMC for short. We are not about, making some hero out of Eric Williams, although he certainly was. We are about intellectual investigation and analysis, and let the chips fall where they may. Mm-hmm. Some people may decide after this investigation and analysis, they may decide that their previously held opinions of Eric Williams were either correct or maybe were not. But the fact remains is that I've always said, people have said to me over the years, not so much now, oh, it must be so painful to hear all these things that they say about your father. Actually, I am grateful for it because it has made him live. This man has been dead 41 years. On Tuesday. Tuesday was, I think, the 29th.
Tuesday going, yes.
41 years. And yet he lives. And why does he live? Because of the very people that are against him and that, that keep the conversation alive. And that is rightly so.
Some weeks ago, I interviewed a woman who is 104 years old. Her name is Ms. Rogers, Ms. Naomi Rogers. She is the sister of D.W. Rogers, D. Wilton Rogers. And we talked about the fact that in collaboration with John Donaldson, D.W., and a couple others, they started the People's National Movement with your dad being brought into that process and the level of political integrity that occurred at that time. Were you around or aware of all that was going on at that time?
Well, I would. First of all, you mean John Donaldson Sr.
Senior, yes,
okay?
yes.
Yes. And I wouldn't say that EW was brought into it. That's not, I don't think that's correct. But what happened was, I was like 5 years old. And so I didn't really know what was going on at the time. But I would go with my aunts and uncles. I remember very well the motorcades with the big loudspeaker on the top. I'd be in a motorcade with them. We would go all over the country distributing pamphlets. I remember that so well because my aunt's finger was the car door slammed on my aunt's finger. So that's what I remembered. I of course had no clue about all the issues swirling around and so on. But he, as you had mentioned, he was at Howard University for several years. Even while he was there, he was very involved in the Caribbean. He brought a major conference to Howard University to discuss the economic future of the Caribbean. And so he got involved with the Caribbean Commission and eventually went back to Trinidad and Tobago as head of their research council. But he always felt that the Caribbean Commission was just another extension of, in a sense, of colonialism and colonization. So eventually in 1955, his contract was not renewed with them and he was essentially fired. But prior to that, or during that time, he was giving these lectures at the old Central Library on Knox Street. And eventually the lectures the place became so packed that they had to move across the road to Woodford Square, which he subsequently renamed the University of Woodford Square. And there was sometimes 20,000 people who basically only had a primary school education who came to listen to this man. He was a fiery and passionate orator. And those lectures, I think in one year he gave 155 lectures. So at the University of Woodford Square, he did some in San Fernando, he did some in the rest of the Caribbean, etc. And people were just enthralled because he made us proud to be who we were.
Yes.
And optimistic. This I am quoting Arnold Rampersad, a very noted scholar from Stanford University, retired now. He's from Trinidad and Tobago. He made us proud. He's talking about these lectures. He made us proud to be who we were and optimistic as never before about what we were going to be or could be. That's very powerful.
During that time, he also had a debate or several debates with Don Basil Matthews. Yes.
And of course we had no TV and people were listening. This was incredible. A debate on Aristotle.
Yes.
Okay, with Don Basil Matthews, listened to by average people with just generally a primary school education at that time. And so these lectures catapulted him into notoriety and into politics. And the People's National Movement, Trinidad and Tobago's first modern political party, was formed in 1955, and they won the election in 1956. And he became chief minister, and we were not independent then, and then
Right.
premier. And then in 1962, with independence, he became prime minister.
At that time, how did that affect you as a daughter? And my dad said your father used to drive a convertible, red convertible.
Yes, a Buick Dynaflow. And I also remember that car really well because I got my finger in the court in the I think the hood used to be able to go down. I'm a child, so my recollection is colored by inaccuracy, I should say. But I remember very well. I got my finger caught in that, and in fact, it was one of the few cars in Port of Spain. And when Princess Margaret visited, I believe it would have been maybe the late 50s. He was asked if they could borrow the car so she could be transported in it. And of course he said yes. And I remember very well that in those days, and I tell my 12-year-old granddaughter this all the time because kids just have not got a clue. And I am so grateful that I was born in 1951 because I'm sort of straddling that era and also this era, and I can see the differences. We, on a Sunday afternoon, our big thing was to drive to Piarco to see the only plane a week coming in or going out. That was our Sunday afternoon, the families. And then after that we would go to the dairies, and the jukeboxes were on the wall, and we would have ice cream and so on. We never had television in Trinidad and Tobago until I was 11. And actually, I think that didn't do me a bit of harm. Anyway, so yeah, I was around during that time. But by the time I was 11, I was very unhappy at school. I was bullied at school. And we didn't have a name for it then, but now it's called bullying. And so I was very unhappy in Trinidad and Tobago. It was difficult. You have this small child being driven to school with a chauffeur, right? In a car, not at that time the Buick Dynaflow. It was a Vauxhall, a black Vauxhall. But even so, people didn't have cars. Many people didn't have cars. And then worse again, a chauffeur. So it was a difficult time. And I met some kids in Tobago. My father took me on vacation there every summer. The Gittinses, Cyril Gittins's daughters, Carol and Susan. And Carol was at the time going to school in England, to boarding school, and Susan was following. And they were talking it up, and I asked my father if I could go. People like to think that he sent me. He did not. I asked him at 11 years old if I could go. And he said yes. And so at 11 years old, I was packed off to England. I went with Larry Constantine's wife. We went by ship on the Atlantis. And I remember one of our helpers in Trinidad and Tobago. In those days, we had, you could get this tin of chiwis or cheese balls or whatever it is they call it now. It was a tin, and you had the key that you had to roll around it in order to open it. And I had that tin. It was a fairly big tin, packed with the same tampon balls I must have been selling in the wood. Yes. And so I went to England, and imagine at 11, I was so young. I know the English some of them send their children to boarding school at 7, but at 11, you lose your country, you lose your culture, you lose the weather, and you're in this place that is so imposing. I mean, I've been back several times, and it all looks so small now. But of course, being much shorter as a child, it looks like, this big, tall buildings. And it was a difficult transition. And I actually was the Trini that stayed there. When I got there, there were 23 people from Trinidad and Tobago. And I actually was the one who stayed the longest. I was there 7 years. 7 years of living hell. I hated it. But guess what? In hindsight, which is 2020 vision, it made me who I am. It was the best thing that could have happened to me at that time.
Forgive me, forgive me. I want to touch on something that may be a little bit personal. But you were growing up with a single parent.
Yes. Long before that either became the fashion or the norm. Yes. Yes. My mother died when I was 2 years old, and she died at 28. She was the love of my father's life. And I was literally, I always say that I had three mothers. I had my maternal grandmother, my maternal aunt, my mother's sister, and our helper. Our helper was there every day. In fact, she came when I was 4. Her sister was there before, when I was between 2 and 4 years old, and she died. So then Inez Caesar, I give her a shout out, God bless her. And she is no less my family if she were my same blood. She was there every day. She literally brought me up. She worked in my family even after she retired from the Prime Minister's residence. She worked in my family a total of 34 years, because she then worked for my cousin. And that woman was like my mother, because she wiped the bottom and kissed the knees, and when I stole some little girl's purse from school. Selling Cameron balls, and you're also a thief. Oh boy.
Oh Lord.
And you know, she said, I am going to tell your father if you don't take that back to school the very next day. And of course I did, because I was terrified of my father. But just to get back to him, when we became independent, I was in England and at school. So I was with the Constantines, but I don't know that I understood the import of what was going on. Actually, one of my favorite anecdotes was, and of course I didn't know this until donkey's years later, it's called the Golden Handshake. The Golden Handshake was a sum of money that the British gave their departing colonies. The only two who didn't get it was India and Ceylon, because at the time they became independent, the British were not offering it. It was a sum of money that was offered to these departing colonies to say, you know, here's this sum of money, go on your way, but it had one caveat. You had to use the money to buy British goods. EW was the only, and let me repeat that, only post-colonial leader to refuse it. Everybody took it, said thanks very much. He said no, because his research and his study, he knew that their British Industrial Revolution was partly built on the backs of slaves. So he found the sum of money an insult, and the strings attached worse.
Yes.
And here's what he said. I love this part. Here's what he said in a November 1962 London School of Economics speech, as well as in a later speech to West Indian students. Oh, well, let me just backtrack a bit. So he said no, and he wrote a letter and said, no, I'm not accepting it. And that letter dropped like a bomb in 10 Downing Street. And they spent a year, the British and EW, fighting, an absolute year fighting. He would come for different, Commonwealth leaders' conferences, and he would have meetings there at the Foreign Office, and they would buy his books and put them on the table as though they were to soften him up, as though they were reading them. And so he says this in this speech: the West Indies are in the position of an orange. The British have sucked it dry, and their sole concern today is that they should not slip and get damaged on the peel. The offer is quite unacceptable, and we would prefer not to have it. It amounted to aid to Britain rather than to Trinidad. I do not propose to accept any concept of the Commonwealth, which means commonwealth for Britain and common poverty for us. You know, I mean, this man was bold, bold-faced.
Strong language.
I'm sorry?
Strong language.
Strong language. And the fight lasted for a year. He eventually lost. He capitulated, had to, but not without becoming a giant thorn in the British backside.
How does that sit with the present discussion of reparations to the colonies?
Well, interestingly enough, an ambassador to CARICOM in November 2019 told me that the Reparations Committee in CARICOM were using capitalism and slavery as part of the basis for reparations. Certainly, I don't think anybody expects that people, descendants of slaves, and I would certainly be one of them, will get a sum of money that we're going to bank or go out to the store and get.
Mm.
But the issue is that Black people all over the world, and especially in the US, have been held down, kept down, and now we, with different legislatures are trying to suppress the vote. One of the things that the EWMC has done is we have an Eric Williams Memorial Lecture. We were 19 consecutive years at Florida International University in Miami. The last one was 2017, but we now have a new home at the University of Texas at Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, we launched the series digitally, and this year we're having an in-person lecture. And the speaker is Dr. Carol Anderson, fiery speaker of Emory University. And the topic is one person, no vote. How voter suppression is destroying our democracy. And that's yet another way of keeping Black and brown people down. In some counties in the U.S., right, where, for example, a county where they have a predominantly Black and brown population, let's say, I'm paraphrasing, let's say they had 100 ballot boxes, drop boxes for ballots, for voting. They now propose to have like 2.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that about?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
Suppression.
They also propose that the Black churches here, which is a powerhouse, you would go to church, and then the Black churches would organize buses, and they would go to the polling stations, which is called Souls for Polls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they decided that in some areas that they would not have polls open on a Sunday at all, or if they did, it would be 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, long after church is finished, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are the people going to do between the time church is finished and 1 o'clock? And then when they were called out on it, they said, oh, that was a typographical error. We really meant to say 11 a.m., not the 1 p.m. that they said. So this is just yet another way of keeping Black and brown people down, preventing us from exercising our fundamental rights. In education, your zip code in America determines what kind of education you have. And therefore what kind of opportunities are open to you. So I think reparations has to be about all these things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this is just my personal point of view.
No, and I think the discussion needs to be continued as far as that is concerned, because there's this myopic view that reparation has to do with people getting $1, a couple dollars each person.
How could that possibly be?
Yeah.
And what would you do with that dollar? The minute you get it in your wallet, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. Like a dose of Eno salts gone through your wallet. Surely that can't be it. And I don't think the proposers of reparations mean that at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Would you say, I mean, 41 years is a long time. 41 years. How present is that memory to you of 41 years ago, the 29th of March, 1981?
Not very, really. And, this last anniversary, well, I've known why for a long time. But this last anniversary led me not to think about that day or the subsequent events, the funeral. Those are sort of, in a way, burned in my memory, but there are many things that I don't recall about the the ancillary things that were happening around the events. Um, and I've thought over the years, why is it that you don't feel, particularly sorrowful or whatever? And I know why. Because for the same 41 years, instead of selling Cameron balls on the corner, I have been involved with the Eric Williams Memorial Collection, Research Library, Archives and Museum at UWI. It wasn't called that then, but I've been working on it since then.
Mm-hmm.
And because, I work on Eric Williams every single day. Every day, that's what I do.
Mm.
So in all sorts of things, the EWMC, we promote conferences. There have been 7 international conferences on Eric Williams and capitalism and slavery. We promote the republication of books, his own and books about him. This is no accident that the UK is republishing Capitalism and Slavery now, or that the 10th language Dutch is in process. This is because of the work we do at the EWMC. And I say that without fear of contradiction whatsoever. I already told you about the prizes that we offer. We also promote a regional essay competition, Cape level essay competition. We have an oral history project. We have a calypsography, more than 150 calypsos mentioning EW. And we even have, we've been working on it for some time, a community service project called the Baby Think It Over program, which is an attempt to stem the rising tide of teen and preteen pregnancies in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course now this lecture, which, as I said, the last Eric Williams Memorial lecture was in 2017. We had 19 years of them, and we've had a hiatus, and now this year, we have this, I'm going to Austin for it. We have this, the 20th lecture, and there's just a number of things that we're involved in. And at the University of Texas, they also did an online exhibition last year, which is available online, of portions of the EWMC Museum at UWI. So I work on Eric Williams every day. There is no time to miss him.
I hear you.
No time. Because I'm constantly reminded every single day of both his follies, his foibles, and his colossal achievements.
I'm told that there is the idea of bringing the EWMC to the public library in Port of Spain.
Well, you mean to the old Central Library?
The old Central Library, yeah, in Port of Spain.
Yes. Well, I've been pushing for this for a long time, if not there, somewhere else. But the old Central Library is, of course, perfect historically, because that's where he began his University of Woodford Square lectures. And he termed these lectures university lectures served with political sauce. That's a direct quote. So I've been pushing for it. We are, I have written successive governments for years about helping to provide a home for the EWMC, one that is more accessible, helping us to, and again, I need to be completely emphatic about this. This is not a paean to Eric Williams. We encourage dissent. We must, otherwise we risk the academic underpinnings of the EWMC, which is critical to its survival. So we've been trying to, push this idea that we could perhaps get this space at a peppercorn rent, but frankly, we also need help moving in. The EWMC is not, we don't have the means to move in and operate and so on. UWI has been carrying the ball for many, many years, and what they have done is amazing.
Yes.
And they have backed up every single one of our projects with their time, their talent, and their treasure. But we can't do it alone. And again, where would America be without its George Washington? If Trinidad and Tobago likes to call Eric Williams the father of the nation, which he did not name himself, then act like it. act like he is the father of the nation and cement that legacy, because there is a legacy, warts and all.
Mm-hmm.
But act like it. Don't just, put your money where your mouth is. Don't just keep talking about father of the nation, and every March 29th, you take him down from the shelf, dust him off, and parade him as the father of the nation. That's unacceptable.
Somebody would say poppycock. I'm not calling names.
I would say something else, but poppycock, yeah.
I would like you to, and I'm thinking that we need to find a way to continue to promote the legacy of Dr. Williams, and particularly, I just got a note from His Excellency Anthony Philip Spencer saying he will be attending the lecture in Texas.
Yes.
And
yes.
and I'm hoping that in some way, if it is going to be online, that we can probably encourage schools to be attached to that in some way, so that at least they can listen to what is going on
it's going to be live streamed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also possible for post-lecture viewing. It's going to be on the Warfield Centers. That's the African American Studies Department at University of Texas. It's going to be on their YouTube channel after. And I think also that a lot of people don't realize Eric Williams is standing internationally,
mm-hmm.
global standing. This man was a statesman, well recognized around the world. Did you know, for example, that he was one of only 73 world leaders asked to write a message to be placed on the moon in 1969? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Okay, so here's what he wrote, and it's there. They sent the astronauts sent a photograph of the ship. It's on a quarter-inch silicon disc,
mm-hmm.
and it's on the moon. And we have photographs of the exact position where his inscription was. And this is what he said: "The government and people of Trinidad and Tobago acclaim this historic triumph of science and the human will. It is our earnest hope for mankind that while we gain the moon, we shall not lose the world." 1969.
1969.
Are we losing the world? Have we lost it?
Have we lost it? Are we in the process of losing it? Tell me what Thabo Mbeki said about Dr. Williams.
Well, Thabo Mbeki, in 2007, the government of South Africa awarded him posthumously their highest national award, the Order of O.R. Tambo Gold. And 2 months later, Mbeki dedicated his authorized biography to EW. Mbeki also mentions him, more than mentions him, half a page about him in a book that he wrote the foreword, I think it was the foreword or preface, whatever, about Timor. Timor was a black South African that was killed by the South African police. And a book was written about him. Mbeki was asked to write the foreword. And there's like a half a page where he talks about Eric Williams and then being no Mother Africa, no Mother India. And the only mother we recognize is Mother Trinidad and Tobago. And mother cannot discriminate between her children.
Hmm.
And he was also the only head of government that was appointed to the United Nations University Governing Council, the initial governing council. He was the only head of government that was appointed to the governing council, which is headquartered in Tokyo. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I knew that he visited China more than once, and
yes,
had an audience with Chairman Mao.
Oh yes, I was there. Let me tell you about when we visited Russia, because again, this was a man, and there was a publication that's is defunct now. They had put out a good size pamphlet. No, you can't call it a pamphlet. It was more than that. Called Too Big to Be Small. And I am using their terms. Too big to be small. Because EW didn't only buck the British with the golden handshake. He bucked the Americans over Chagaramas.
Yes.
He won that fight, forcing them to pay for significant infrastructure, Saddle Road, etc., and also to build the UE, one of the UE,
the JFK Center.
JFK, yeah, the JFK Center. But also, and the other thing too about Chagaramas, he, with his fight for Chagaramas, the U.S. consul in Trinidad, in 2 non-consecutive years, talks in writing about, how does he put it? We must disengage with Williams and work for his ultimate demise. What does that mean? 2 non-consecutive years. They're talking about this. What exactly does that mean? Does it mean Allende in Chile? Does it mean politically? What exactly does that mean? Work for his demise. Ultimate demise. Now, when we went to Russia in 1975, oh my God, this is another great anecdote. Russia, and of course Russia is very much in the news and very much in keeping with what I know. I was there too. Of my sense of them, or at least the regime. So when we went to Russia, we went to Moscow, we went to Leningrad, which used to be St. Petersburg, and we went to Kiev. And when we got to Moscow, the Russians were insistent, and there has to be another dictionary word for insistent here. They were insistent that EW and them would put out a communique and have a press conference that Trinidad and Tobago would sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. They were insistent. He said, no, absolutely not. This is not within my purview. This is within the purview of the government and people and Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. I can sign nothing. I will sign nothing. Well, they tried all sorts of blandishments. They said, we can give you a ride on Brezhnev's presidential plane. We can take you fishing with Brezhnev. The only relationship to a fish my father ever had was on his plate. So I'm not sure what fishing with Brezhnev would have done. And then the cardinal sin, which tells me exactly like what is happening today, they did not do their homework. Because they said to Eric Williams, why don't you all stick to what you do best? Calypso and steel band. Oh boy.
Song and dance.
Song and dance. EW refused to speak for the rest of the visit in Moscow. He said neither good morning, good afternoon, yes, no, nothing. And when Alexei Kosygin, who was foreign minister at the time and later became premier of the USSR, when he had a lunch for the delegation, EW turned his chair to the back of turned the back of his chair to the table and read a book through the whole lunch.
I could see it.
He never uttered another word until we got to Kiev, where he didn't talk to me he didn't talk to me at all about what Stalin had done to the Ukrainians prior to World War II and engineered a famine that killed 3 million Ukrainians. The Holodomor, it's called. He didn't talk to me about that. But what he said about the Ukrainians made me understand what a proud and independent people they were. This is what I got from him. And I think we're seeing that now.
We're seeing it now, yes.
Yes. So he absolutely, I mean, that was like the Russia trip was I don't know what else they agreed upon or didn't agree upon or discussed. But from my perspective, it was pretty much a disaster. I cried the entire time, except when we got to Kiev, because I didn't understand what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I thought my father was so rude. And he was. He matched them head to head in their rudeness and discourtesy. I remember that they took me on a tour. We went on a boat ride on the river. And the guide says to me, look at this river. Show me a piece of paper and I'll show you a foreigner. That's what he said to me. I'm a foreigner.
Yeah.
Boorish, belligerent, and boldface.
Discourteous.
Well, EW matched them in that, huh? He did. He did. And the rest of the delegation, we have oral histories about this. The rest of the delegation was saying, oh God, here we go into Siberia. We're not going back to Trinidad and Tobago. We're going to end up in Siberia.
Be banished.
Yes. Lost.
We're sitting here and I'm becoming so comfortable in our discussion, and I'm now realizing that we're over the 9 o'clock hour, that we're supposed to have ended our part of the program, and we have not even taken calls from the public. Can you give me a promise that sometime in the future we'll have you back, because there's so much more for us to discuss?
Absolutely. And, I'm so grateful to you. I never pass an opportunity to publicize Eric Williams or the EWMC and the work that we're doing there, which is so important. I never pass up an opportunity.
I would give you an opportunity for your closing thoughts, and we will talk separately about us doing this again, because there's so much more. We cannot cover everything we need to do in 1 hour. There's so much more for us to talk. But I give you an opportunity to give your closing thoughts, and then we speak privately about the next time we'll be on with the Legacy series.
Well, I cannot give any closing thoughts more succinctly than Ken Gordon did. Now, Ken Gordon, as you know, was editor of the Trinidad Express newspaper for many years, and he was the founder of the Caribbean-wide CCN group. He was EW's nemesis. The two of them hated each other. Nemesis. But here's what Ken said in 2009 when he was giving the University of Trinidad and Tobago, he was a speaker at the Distinguished Lecture Series. He says, many things have gone right for us as a country, and perhaps the most important one was having Dr. Williams emerge to preside over our politics in 1956 and lead us into independence. And that is a statement I never thought I would make, but one which with hindsight is undeniable. The creative and visionary management of our energy resources, our institutionalized commitment to the rule of law, the independence of the judiciary and of the press, these are the macro things, and we must be everlastingly grateful for them. Of course, I have edited some of what I'm sure he goes on in the lecture to say not such glowing things, because they had an adversarial relationship. But the point is, this is what he said a full 28 years after EW's death.
And 41 years later, we still have not covered all that we can and should about this towering intellect that was produced in Trinidad and Tobago for value to the world. The man, Dr. Eric Eustace Williams. I'm so grateful that you gave us the opportunity to talk this morning, and I look forward to our future engagement. It will not be long again for us to sit down and talk. I'm looking forward to listening to that lecture coming up at the University of Texas in Austin, Texas. You've sent me the link, so I know I'm going to be logging on to that. And I want to thank you very much, Mrs. Erica Williams-Connell, for your very, very in-depth discussion this morning about your father, our father of the nation, so-called Dr. Eric Eustace Williams. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Errol, so much. I'm deeply grateful to you.
My pleasure.
Forever Young and the Legacy Series, hosted by Errol Lewis and Chris J. Saturdays 6 to 9 a.m. on Isaac 98.1 is brought to you by the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services Education Unit.
Wow.
Chris?
Right? Quite a lot. No, we went over, so we have to speed out of here.
We have to speed out of here. I'm very grateful to Mickey for allowing us 6 minutes of his time. I'm going to take no more, Mickey, and I owe you, and I will pay you back.
Your ear.
I'm going to pay you back.
Just pass by our friends at Zan.
But I just want to say what a fabulous morning we spent.
Yes.
I am really, really grateful to Mrs. Erica Williams-Connell. She was very, she didn't hold back. And she painted a clear picture of her father, as she said, with all his foibles and all his famous parts. You know, everything packaged together gave us that man that represented whom we call the father of the nation. I'm looking forward to us having another session with her.
Installment.
Yes. Yes. Chris, thanks.
No problem.
And all I have to say right now is I'll go on.
You're gone. As always, want to say blessings to my parents, Cuthbert Joseph, the bishop, and his beautiful wife, my mom,
Looking
Celine.
forward to see your mom, Celine, tomorrow.
They will be there. Save a seat for them, eh?
God willing.
If
Listen,
you know what good for you.
I'm saving 2 seats just because I know she'll bring...
Nah, Daddy coming for sure. Yeah, both
Yes,
of them
okay.
coming. All right? And my beautiful wife, Avenel, we love you so much. Our beautiful daughter, Imara, and our handsome, creative son, Amani Christoph. Could not do it without you guys. As always, want to let you know, don't package your dream to fit within your budget. And broken crayons can still color. I will be at Errol show tomorrow. So if you have some coffee and fridge magnet, you can work with it then. All right?
And tea.
If you have some coffee and fridge magnet, you can work with it. Mickey is up next. Once again, we would want to apologize for our YouTube viewers. We experienced a few technical difficulties with the interview via YouTube, but you can go to our Facebook page and the interview will be uploaded to YouTube at a later date. So thank you so much. DJ Mickey and the Saturday Shakedown is up next.